person of interest.
The older man who was pushed just walked slowly right onto the platform, perfect timing. The other man who pushed him was just walking slowly towards him and shoved him the last second.
Who is well known to police, apparently, is accused of pushing another man onto the tracks.
He was handcuffed and being escorted by NYPD out of...
A woman was sleeping on a stationary F train when someone approached her and lit her clothing on fire. Police say the suspect, 33-year-old Carlos Zepeta, watched the victim as she burned.
A postal worker was killed and one woman is under arrest this morning. Let's get right to Good Day's Briella Tomasetti. She is live outside that bodega in Harlem. And Briella, investigators believe this all started over who was next in line to order at that deli.
Welcome back to the channel. This is Can I Be Ernest, back with another video, the first video of 2025. And it's a whole lot to unpack. Let's get right to it. You see the title, New York City is a dump. And as someone who spent most of his life in that city, I'm confident enough to make that type of declaration. I witnessed 4 mayors, Mayor Koch, Mayor Dinkins, rest in peace to both of them, Rudy Giuliani, and Mike Bloomberg. Sometime during Mike Bloomberg's tenure is when I made my exit, and to never turn back. I'm here to tell you it doesn't matter, blue state, red state, none of that matters because New York City was notoriously bad during Ed Koch, terms. Okay, and that's early 80s if you want to do your research. The city was unique, and that's the city that I loved and adored, but crack was rampant. Violence was rampant. It was bad. It was bad. So I don't like when people say, oh, well, this is what happens when you vote blue. Nah, Ed Koch was a Republican last I checked, and the city was bad. Late 70s, all through the 80s. I mean, New York City was number one as far as the murder rate, as far as major cities in the country. It was bad. And I grew up watching it all in real time. From graffiti being all over the place to, crack vials on the pavement to hypodermic needles. I remember seeing it all. That 80s gloom and doom era. But this current era is different. And it may not be neck and neck with the 80s, but it's different. And it's close. Something's off about this city and it needs to be said. Growing up, I just remember always being fascinated by the amount of tourism that New York City attracted. I get it. We tout ourselves as the capital of the world. If you can make it here, you can make it anywhere. You can make money here. And thankfully I don't live in New York, but you may hear me from time to time refer to here because it's where I'm from. So I'm used to saying here, but I used to always be fascinated, by everyone's allure about New York. Because, when you're from there, it's not a big deal most of the time. Here's the thing about New York that puzzles me. It's a city of 8 to 10 million people. And, crime has always been rampant. There was a time from around 1995 to about, I'd say, a little past 9/11, maybe 2001, 2002, where New York City felt different in a good way. And guess who was in office during that time? The hated, vilified Rudolph Giuliani. And, the city had never looked better. Despite his bullying tactics, despite the racial profiling, stop and frisk from the NYPD and certain task force, despite all of the negativity surrounding his 2 terms, the city felt safe. It did. When you compare it to the doom and gloom of the Ed Koch and David Dinkins runs, New York City was at its peak. And it was at its peak during Giuliani's tenure. You can say what you want about him. You can hate him. Listen, there were times I didn't like him. And I didn't like some of his attitudes towards minorities. But it is what it is. The city never went back to that again. Look at it now. And I wasn't there again. I wasn't there when de Blasio took over, and I'm certainly not there with Mayor Adams. But there's no comparison. And the stuff that we're seeing now with subway incidents, people being pushed into the tracks, people being lit up, on fire. These things have happened before. This is not a news flash for those of you from New York. We know this. We know New York, every day there's an event of some sort. There's something that can go wrong in a New York minute, but the idea that New Yorkers continue to tout ourselves as the capital of the world. And, everybody wants to live here and come here. Not anymore. You couldn't pay me to live in New York City. And again, I lived in 3 to 5 boroughs, went to school in the 4th borough. I know New York City like the back of my hand. And I could hit the Mega Millions, the Powerball simultaneously, and I wouldn't buy a home there. Not a condo, not anything. No real estate, nothing. I don't want any parts of New York. I've mentioned in the old video how, New York cuts your life expectancy short. Not only does it cut your life expectancy short, it can cut your life short. Because there's no reason that you can wake up one day, take the subway to work or to a friend's house or to a girlfriend or boyfriend's house, and for 1 second, your back can be, turned towards the turnstile, looking at your phone. The phone is the new age newspaper. I know a lot of people are getting on some of these passengers for looking down on their phones and not being alert when trains are coming, when people are around them. But back in the day, people used to be on there, read newspapers. So there was always a distraction. But the fact that you can be standing on the platform and see somebody jump a turnstile, or not see somebody jump a turnstile, and face death in a nanosecond, as you saw in that clip in the beginning. I mean, that's insanity, and we become desensitized towards it. New Yorkers, there's a shootout every day somewhere. Somebody's getting shot or stabbed somewhere in that city. So we've become desensitized towards the news that makes world news. This incident recently with the migrant setting the passenger on fire, again, we've seen things like that before, unfortunately. And that's sad. But New York is at a point now where they need to fall back. No more bragging about anything. No one cares anymore. No one cares. There was a time back in the day where, yes, you wanted to be from New York or at least visit there. The moment you say you were from New York, you got attention from women. They love the accent, whatever the narratives that existed back in the day about New York holds true. But in 2025, I don't think it matters anymore because New York lost its identity. It did. In the 80s, when it was basically, a lot of mom and pop shops, very artsy looking, just the style of the infrastructure, even the people, the personalities. It was miles apart to what it is now. Aside from gentrification, aside from big franchises taking over and, you can find a Whole Foods in New York City. We would have never seen something like a Whole Foods move to New York 30 years ago. But aside from gentrification, aside from these major franchises coming over, it's a city full of out-of-towners. People from the Midwest, from the West Coast, from other countries who now call New York home. And those who are born and raised in New York, and those true New Yorkers, they're just a different breed now. The ones coming up in the 90s and the 2000s, they're a different breed now. We've stolen certain gang culture from other cities in the country. Our fashion is different. I don't know. New York is so trash now that if I see somebody driving around where I live with a New York State license plate, I'm cursing up a storm. I'm mad. What are you doing out here? Why are you out here? I don't want a New Yorker around me. I know what it entails. I know what it brings. And that's not saying we're all like that. Obviously, I'm not what I dislike. But the narrative exists. The attitude, the arrogance, the just the whole vibe is different. But back to the point, watching these videos in recent weeks of just the subway incidents, it's not cool, man. It's not cool. And the things that are happening now did not happen when Giuliani was in office. It didn't. You may have had an isolated event here and there, but it wasn't as rampant. But we were so quick to dismiss this guy. He's racist. He's this. He's that. All things could be true, but the city felt safe. You could be out 3, 4 in the morning and didn't feel scared at all. If anything, you'd be scared to do something wrong because some type of law enforcement was around. So you were on your P's and Q's, and it's clear people didn't appreciate it. I have family who won't step foot outside at times, but they won't leave New York either. And I understand New York is not an easy place to leave. Everything's open. If you're into the nightlife, you could be out all night. Corner stores, bodegas, everything's open. Everything's accessible. You can hop on the subway and get to a destination in no time. You don't have to worry about, too much as far as travel is concerned. If you have a car, you got to deal with the double parking and all that nonsense and the traffic. But if you don't have a car, you can move pretty fluently in the city. But it's a hellhole, man. It's not a place. It's not conducive to your well-being. It's not a place you can raise a family. You have to constantly be on edge. Who wants to live like that? Life is already hard. The showdown of walking down the street and facing somebody. If you're not in your phone or just tunnel vision looking straight ahead, someone's going to be in your face staring, looking you up and down. It's not for everybody. I don't even know how the hell I made it out of New York City, to be honest with you, because every day it felt like you were either going to get into a fight or somebody was going to get hurt, period. Of course you have your good days. And again, I'm going to always say this. You have your good people. Most of my, close friends are from New York. Still tight to this day. But overall, the things that I've watched in recent weeks and recent months and recent years, I cringe. Like, what are we doing? And it's to the point now where the law is different now. Because, they were overly aggressive. They were overzealous at times when it came to racial injustice. And I guess people, fought back, protest. And a lot of law enforcers are just kind of like, that's the approach. They're not as aggressive as they used to be. And now it's the Wild Wild West. Again, law enforcement, they're completely guilty of abusing their power at times. Completely. As overzealous as law enforcement has been towards minorities in recent years, I don't know. Maybe they got to get a little aggression back, because a lot of the crimes that I see, unfortunately, are committed by black and brown. Let's just call it what it is. Every time I watch something from WPIX or Fox 5 in New York, every time I see a clip or read a little article from the New York Post, black or brown. Something's wrong. Something's wrong with the picture. Maybe it's the project living, the apartment living, being in close quarters. I don't know what it is. Something is clearly off and has been for 40, 50 years. I don't know what was happening in the city in the 1960s. I know in the 70s and 80s is when things took a turn for the worse. If there's anyone watching this video who's old enough to remember the 50s, the 60s in New York City, what was it like then? Because blacks and Hispanics long existed in New York City. We didn't just show up in the 70s and 80s. So what was happening during the 50s and 60s? Early 70s, before things just went downhill? Because I remember watching clips and seeing like the Bronx on fire in the late 70s. And then, of course, once the war on drugs, or rather the crack epidemic, started in New York City, it was over. From the abandoned buildings to everything, babies being found in the trash. And New York City, Those in my age group, we've seen it all for the most part. But why hasn't it recovered? I'm just curious. I just want to know what keeps you in New York City if it's not finances. Because I understand finances, it's not easy to just pick up and leave sometime. You might be making good money in New York and it's just like, man, this is all you know. But what keeps you in New York City if you're somebody from New York and watching this right now? What's the intrigue? It can't be the bodegas. It can't be. Not with DoorDash and Grubhub available. You can order whenever you want now. Who cares if the corner stores is open 3, 4 in the morning? You should be in bed 3, 4 in the morning. You know, like, you know, of course I'm kidding, but like, what's the draw? A joker like me will never go back if I could help it. But sad turn of events with these recent subway incidents. 2025 is not going to get any better. So I'm not one of those types. Oh, it's a new year. Hopefully things getting off. The city is what the city is. And the more people, you know, that populate that city, the more crime will be committed. What needs to change? We know Mayor Adams is not the answer. We know that. That's clear. Do we need another Republican in office like Giuliani? And if so, will you appreciate that?